Shock Piece: The Search for Freedom. A novel by C. Nguyen. Chapter 28: Woody Ben and the Cambodian War. "Hey Ben, how's your lunch?" Juan asked. In his hand was a tin of titjabom, dried, shredded pork. The precious animal protein that everyone was dying for in the camp, packed tightly in an old Guigo's powdered milk tin that his mother had given him. The Guigo's tin was a phenomenon that every household in South Vietnam possessed with pride and used extensively as a container in the 60s to 80s. The powdered infant formula milk marked families as upbeat and trendy in those times, as it was mistakenly being considered as much more preferable than breast milk. Juan knew that in order for him to have this half-a-kilo tin of dried meat, his family had had to skimp on their daily portion to provide him with special treatment. His mother had wrapped the tin in layers of old, tattered newspaper, as Juan had instructed, as he did not want any of his mates here in the camp to get the impression that he had anything special, especially meat. It was shameful, Juan had to admit sadly. There had been many occasions in the previous weeks when food was stolen from other recruits. Now everyone was holding tight to their supply. Most was hidden carefully or disguised in different forms of containers to avoid being taken. Not many recruits had a family that could afford to visit them or bring them supplies. For growing boys of 18 or 19, the meager meat ration of 250 grams per month was never enough to satisfy their need. Some had fallen into the obsessive pattern of rummaging through their roommates' supply. Hunger had taken over their sense of morality, and there was no choice but to obey the demands of the stomach. Sad as it always was in history, even Juan had shared with his two friends a looted bread roll brought back from Saigon that a mate had hidden in his sack. They had divided the 20-centimeter long bread roll equally between the three of them, while the owner was being punished severely for breaking out without a permit. After enduring 100 rods and a whole night of standing upright near the flagpole, cold and hungry, he returned to his bed in the morning exhausted and boiling with rage on finding that his previous bread roll with bacon, liver pate, and salad had disappeared. The delicious aroma had given away the hideout, and so it had gone quickly into the empty stomachs of the boys. In the end, Juan and the others managed to find a packet of instant noodles with half a dozen dried shrimps as a compensation for the poor guy, though it was much less tasty. Ben looked at Juan as if that was the silliest question asked. "The lunch? You're asking me about the lunch? It's fucking good. There should be more of that, if it's what you mean, Juan. You must have had a triple good lunch yourself by the look of your deliriously happy face." Juan chuckled at his friend's banal swearing. If there was something he learnt fast in this training camp, it was the foul language. Juan had rarely sworn before at home, in fact, not a single word, but now he picked up the habit readily and used it extensively. It was a way to mollify the exasperation that most of them carried as extra baggage in their life and had no other choice but to let it out through profanity. "Yeah, twice this month already. I'm getting fat. See here?" Juan flapped gaily at his expanded belly as proof. "Did you manage to save some lunch for me?" Then he mimicked his friend with his foul language. Hey, stop fucking swearing or I won't tell you anything." "Yeah, right. What's there to tell? And why should I do you that favor, Juan? Saving some lunch for you. Are you a royal, Juan? Don't you want to know how my sister's doing?" Juan teased. Ben's face turned red immediately. He was still a shy boy after all. He tried to cover his embarrassment by quickly asking, "Your sister, the cheeky little monkey who talks non-stop and laughs at everything?" Juan swore. "Bullshit. You know very well which one I mean. It's no use pretending, because I've heard you calling her name in your dreams while you were scratching your hairy balls, Ben." "Is that so? I thought I was calling your darling baby's name and fantasized having her as my girlfriend in my sleep every night, Juan," Ben retaliated triumphantly. Juan jerked up his unloaded AK-47 and playfully pointed it toward Ben, then pressed down on the safety catch. Bang, bang! I shoot you down even in your dreams, Ben. Don't you dare think about her. Then, as an afterthought, he added, Besides, she doesn't even know that you exist on this earth, mind you. Her heart is already filled with my image. You haven't got a chance, shy boy. Ben playfully punched Juan in the stomach in a defensive attack and asked jokingly, So how's the other sister then? Did you ask if she missed me? Kim was supposed to come today, but it's Trin who came instead. She said to say hi to you and said that you still look like a dreaming poet, even in uniform. Yeah, this fucking uniform. How did we manage to be in it? Ben said solemnly. The cheerfulness had evaporated rapidly from the two friends with the mention of their situation. Ben continued, I only care for cigarettes now, not a fucking poem. Woody Ben swore even louder, as if it gave him more relief for his bottled up emotions. The trap he and his friends were in had no opening, and the prospect of the future was frightful to them all. The war with Cambodia was coming closer. They were going to be the first to march to the frontier, no doubt about it, Ben mused. His swearing masked his fear and frustration, and it had increased in intensity lately. Got one dong, Juan? Ben pleaded in a quieter voice. He needed a smoke urgently. Headquarters had given him a letter telling Ben of his transfer further south, closer to the border. He had gone in before Juan, and so his training was considered over. Even though they had not fired a single blank or a real bullet in training, this was it. Time to get real, Ben thought, frightened. He did not want to tell Juan yet, lest his friend be alarmed unnecessarily. Juan turned sideways, shielding himself from Ben and picking out a 1 dong note in his bundle of 500 dong new currency his mother had given him for the planned escape. He gave it to his friend. Here, go easy on the cigarettes, Ben. Ben turned and walked away to the canteen to get his smoke. Juan was relieved. Juan did not want Ben to know that he had a whole half a kilo of dried meat on hand. He would share some with Ben and his other friends eventually. But later, and only after he had divided it into smaller containers, his way to deter the craving, showing them that there was not a lot to be shared, pitifully. That was the survival instinct of the needy. In order to sustain the long days and nights in this training camp, Juan had to scheme. He just had to, Juan reassured himself. There were days when he was starving and had looked with yearning eyes at Ben, lying next to his bed in the same dormitory, having a banquet on just a pack of steaming instant noodles and the tiniest dried prawns. Juan had drooled, his stomach growling hungrily and his nostrils flaring to inhale the delicious aroma occupying the entire space. Ironically, in normal circumstances, that would have been considered a very simple meal for a down and out. He had stood up immediately when Ben was about to discard the remaining soup in his bowl, and gathering up courage that had seemed impossible before, he muttered, Don't, Ben. Leave that for me, I'll have it, please. Ben looked at Juan hesitantly. He was not sure of what to do. The packet of instant noodles was just barely enough for him, and what was left in the bowl was muddy soup and a few dried shallot flakes without anything solid. In the end, he moved away reluctantly to let Juan have access to it and said in a regretful tone, Really, Juan? I didn't know you were hungry too. Juan shrugged his shoulders unceremoniously, then carried the bowl carefully with the remnant of his best friend's leftover meal to his quarters and poured in the cold boiled rice from his last share. Juan sat down gulping every grain of rice and savoring the soup to the last spoon in the bowl. It was enough to satisfy his hunger pangs. The most delicious instant noodle soup with boiled rice Juan had ever eaten. It was a meal Juan would never forget as long as he lived. Those were destitute periods in between visits, Juan remembered. He was lucky this month with the extra supply and surely had enough to last till the end. Even with stingy measurements and contriving to share frugally, Juan still ran out of his food supply by the third week. Then he had to rely on his friend's generosity or scheming disposition, just like they had to rely on his earlier. They were Woody Ben and Glassy Ben, two of his high school mates who shared the same fate with him in this journey. It had rained for a whole week. The monsoon season had just started. The red earth became soggy, slippery clay. The days were miserable with stuffy humidity, and the nights were chillier in the misty mountain air. He had no money and nothing else in his bags. The daily meals provided by the camp canteen of diluted porridge and dried salty fish or mixed sweet potato chunks in old broken rice were inadequate to keep the chill out of his emaciated body. Juan wanted to go home. He felt so lonely and lost in this unfamiliar environment. It was only his third month, and Juan already dreaded the time ahead. The cacophony of toads croaking in the long dark hours of hungry nights did not help. He lay in his wooden trench bed, listening to this discomforting sound and wondering about his future. Juan missed Tanya, his high school sweetheart since year 11. They had been courting for 2 years before Tanya and her family disappeared. He had been heartbroken and had wandered the streets of Saigon looking for their lost memories. He had succumbed to be conscripted into the army when her letter arrived telling him that she was now in America. His dream of seeing her again seemed hopeless at the time. His first love seemed short-lived and left him empty inside. Finally, Juan drifted into a broken sleep, the sound of his stomach growling in concert with the toads croaking, echoing in his ears like a sad, unmelodious lullaby. "Hey, wake up! What the fuck's up with you, Juan? It's past 8 o'clock already." Woody Ben shook Juan's shoulders vigorously through the thick mosquito net. The sun was shining through the open windows. The corrugated dwelling was hot and humid already. Ben's voice was as if coming from a dream, and in his grogginess, Juan did not know where he was. The heat and lack of sleep made him even more confused. Ben shook him again, showing more concern. "Juan, get up. Are you okay? Today's our turn to dig. Better we start early, otherwise the rising sun will roast us alive." His voice was gentler. Juan bounced up and out of his dreamlike state in an instant. The dreaded task they had today was to dig a cistern to use as a toilet facility for the whole camp, then fill up the old one with the dirt they had dug up. There were 10 or so partially covered tents built on top of the holes, creating simple structures from tree trunks and tin roofs, which were used as toilets for the whole camp. They were located further into the jungle. The red clay was as hard as a brick in the dried days, but softer to dig after the rain, even though it could become very sticky. They had no choice but to work in the latter conditions. "Oh shit, why didn't you wake me up earlier, Ben? It's getting late." Juan bolted out of bed, hurriedly put on his rubber sandals, the Viet Cong sandals that made headlines in the war, and went out with Ben to a row of ceramic urns, some covered by wooden lids and some bare, to wash his face. He reached up a pole to get the shiny hollow coconut shell to use as a pail. It had a long bamboo stick through its upper opening and extended to form a handle at the other end. The shell was smooth and brown, showing grains of lighter colors throughout. It was beautiful in its own natural way. He stepped onto the raised platform constructed of the wooden trunks of gum trees, bound together with small gaps in between, 4 poles high in the corners and about 3 to 4 meters square. It was used as a wet area and also as a kitchen bench for cooking preparation and washing up dishes, doing laundry, and for general use. They did every chore standing up or squatting down on a small stool, also made of sticks. The platform stood next to a well so deep that Ben and Juan used to dip their head in and sing some silly tune to hear the sound mysteriously echoing back to them. The well was half full today after many days of rain, but most of the time it was so dry that a rope of 20 meters was needed to get some muddy reddish water from it. There was no toothpaste, but a jar of grayish salt to use instead. Juan dipped his toothbrush into it and quickly went about his routine. The taste of salt had no resemblance to the Colgate minty toothpaste he used to have before the fall of Saigon, but it did the trick wonderfully by killing some bacteria and refreshing his mouth somehow. "Oh my, are you going to enter a beauty contest, Juan? Hurry up," Ben urged. "Don't be so fucking slow. We won't be able to get done today, Miss Universe." "Shut up." Juan splashed some water toward Ben in response and stepped off the platform. They strode away quickly, carrying shovels, buckets, and a bottle of water in their hands. "And stop swearing." The sun was high, and the heat was already strong. The air was muggy and humid. It was very quiet in the jungle. The gum trees were standing still. There was not even a breeze to rustle the leaves. No birds chirping, no insects calling. Those had been captured and eaten by hungry men, women, and children throughout the entire country. The pair walked in silence for 5 minutes before Juan broke out. "I'm going to dessert soon, Ben." Ben turned around to look at Juan and shot out a series of exclamations. "Oh shit, get real. Oh my god, I knew it. You've been acting fucking strangely in the last few weeks." Then he added, "How?" Juan looked around to make sure they were alone before answering. "I don't know yet, Ben, but I must somehow. My family's going to escape." "Your family? Everyone?" "Yes, everyone." Juan heard his friend draw a deep breath. He felt very sad, but somehow glad at the same time. Leaving his friend behind, alone in his ordeal, was something that made Juan sick at heart, especially knowing of Ben's affection for his sister Kim. The feeling of loss that Ben would face when Kim had gone would perhaps equal his own when Tanya had disappeared a few months ago. His mother had instructed him to keep it a secret, but Juan was so struck by his friend's loneliness that he just had to share with Ben. Juan could not leave without saying goodbye to his closest buddy. Ben would have felt betrayed, even though betrayal was happening everywhere in the country right now. The South Vietnamese were facing a disturbing period during 1975 and 1978. It seemed they no longer trusted each other. Some families were hiding secrets between members, as one son or daughter could have become an informant and brought the whole family to destruction. The son or daughter was a new member of the Communist Party and hoped to gain a step up by being an active informant about any serious plot. Fathers were wary of their sons and avoid talking about the fighting period before the fall of Saigon, lest they were branded rebels. Teachers were afraid to tell students too much in case they were branded capitalists. Mothers were reluctant to share intimate thoughts with daughters in case they were branded filthy and defiled, either that or vice versa. But Juan trusted his friend, and it pained him not to. After his revelation, they worked in silence, digging a large, deep trench as a toilet for the whole camp. Juan did not know what else to say to Ben. Ben decided not to tell Juan he was moving out to the battlefield next Monday week. He did not want his friend to worry for him. The next afternoon, Juan left camp after persuading the guard to let him out to buy some cigarettes for both of them. Juan left the guard with his watch as collateral, a precious possession in the mind of the northern soldier. A watch, a radio, and a bicycle. Those three were the most wanted items in the post-war period. Juan took up his courage and just walked out of camp. He did not dare to run nor quicken his pace. He hitchhiked and walked home, pretending to be on leave whenever anyone interested to ask. Even in his desertion, he carried his AK-47, albeit without ammunition, on his shoulder for the whole trip, and that added some sort of protection miraculously. The bus driver and other passengers eyed him warily, thinking he was a northern soldier. Ben and Juan did not say goodbye to each other. It was not until half a year later that Juan got news of his friend's death in the Cambodia-Vietnam War in 1978. All Ben had was a mere 2 days in combat. There was never an official death count, but it was estimated at 15 to 30,000 casualties in the Vietnamese army, with more than 30,000 wounded and more than 100,000 Cambodian civilians dead during the decade of war between Cambodia and Vietnam during 1977 and 1989. The figures excluded the famine that killed more than 500,000 Cambodians between 1979 and 1980, after the fall of the Khmer Rouge and the horrendous killing fields of 2 million deaths that reduced the population figure of Cambodia in half.